On the, I'm sorry?
I'm just waiting for the recording rights. There we go.
I guess now we're okay. First order of business is to deal with the agenda. I have a motion by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor King, that the agenda for the February 18, 2014 regular meeting of Policy and Priority Committee be adopted. Any amendments to the agenda?
Done.
Not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Okay. Oh, yes. Are there any items on our agenda that any members have pecuniary interest, conflict of interest? Madam Clerk, could you record that? There are none. Under new business, Public Works Policy Review Overview Proposal. We have a motion by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor King, that the issue summary report Public Works Policy Review Overview Proposal be received and the following recommendation be approved. That Policy and Priorities Committee direct staff to proceed with the policy review and to begin developing policy for the recommended topic areas, and that staff be further directed to seek a budget estimate to conduct a job hazard analysis, which would include development of the applicable policies. Discussion. Councilor Durley.
Just one point of clarification, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking, there's some 25 items there. I'm assuming that they will be coming in pieces where, 3 or 4 like we did with other policies. Just clarification on that, or I know it through you to.
Mr. Mantle.
There'll be pieces.
Okay, that's great.
Any other questions or discussion? Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I was looking at the list and trying to review at council's what we've discussed in previous years around this table, some of the policies, and our former colleague Councillor Clark spoke about a number of them on occasion, construction policy, etc. I think they're all here, the construction claim policy, those kind of things. So all the ones that I could think of through the years are reflected here, and I just want to commend staff for that. I think it is important that we do these policies, especially to note that there aren't many currently. So a number of these things, I'm sure, are done by staff, and their general practices. It'll be good to get them into actual policies that council can review and approve and carry on with our activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other comments? I'd like just to make one comment or ask a question, perhaps to Mr. Mantle. I note that there's a number of items that are asterisk indicating that these policies might require outside help, one of which is the job hazard analysis. I wonder if it'd be instructive to speak to the consultant, if we are going to hire an outside consultant, to have a look at all of these policies and that have been identified as needing outside help, to help us develop some sense of a budget going forward, so that we can make sure that we have the funds available to undertake this comprehensive policy review that we've got outlined here.
I think that's the last part of the recommendation.
Well, it's specifically dealing with the risk assessment, and I'm saying there's a number of other items that have been earmarked as possibly needing outside consultants. So I'd like to see an overview of the total costs we might be.
I think that wasn't captured in the applicable policies. That was I believe that was
Which would
the intent.
include development of the applicable. Oh, I read that as being applicable policies relative to the hazard analysis. Do you need clarity to that, or is it my own misunderstanding of the motion? Let me read it. That staff be further directed to seek a budget estimate to conduct a job hazard analysis, which would include development of the applicable policies. And I would think that's referring to the job hazard analysis, not to the other policies.
I think the word that's missing there is which would also include development of applicable policies. Anyways,
Madam Clerk,
I
bring some
believe-
clarity.
I believe that that was the intent of the CAO, that there would be a request to review the policies and to determine which one would require outside assistance through a consultant. Not just a job hazard analysis, but the job hazard analysis would help to identify which policies we might need outside assistance with. So the addition of the word suggested
Which would
analysis,
also
which would
include-
also include.
Yeah, that'll work.
I believe that would meet the intent of the CAO.
So I write that in. Okay, as long as that gives us an overview of the costs that we might be facing for all these other policies. Is everybody clear on that?
Yep.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. Under old business, part of the regular policy review, we have before us an item dealing with concussion prevention and management policy. And this was moved by Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor King, that the issue summary report concussion prevention and management policy be received, and that Policy and Priorities Committee recommend to Council that the concussion prevention management policy be approved. Discussion. Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Note the last line in the proposed policies: the town is not responsible for implementing any concussion or head injury policy for independent teams, leagues, organizations, or associations that utilize town fields or facilities. And I'm wondering whether we shouldn't, nevertheless, as a town, insist that all those independent teams have themselves a policy which is consistent with our standard, otherwise not be allowed to use our facilities. It seems to me that we're taking an awful risk saying our activities have a concussion policy, but anybody else renting and using our facilities, we don't exercise any control over their standards. It seems to me there's a risk in that, and I'd like to see us avoid that.
Ms. Van Ravensway, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. This actual policy, start from the beginning, it was initiated basically by the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport. Now, to apply for any grants, you must have a concussion policy on the books. So the intent of this policy was to protect ourselves in any programs that we run ourselves, as well as to educate the public and the users of our facilities on concussion prevention. And it was advised that in the policy we have that last statement, so that we are not in no way governing, we're not responsible for their actions, because we're not there, we're not in control. And that's why that actual note was put in. I must say, it's our practice when we have staff training, we go through the procedures on, identifying concussions and things like that, but we have never had a policy on the books.
Thank you. Councillor Rubin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would hope, and I think we would all feel that we would want to have a concussion policy, not just because we need to have one on the books for grant-seeking purposes, that sort of thing, that we're actually concerned about preventing concussion. And that's why I think and I believe that we are. Mr. Van Ravensway answers certainly indicated that we are, and that we try to educate the public. But it does seem to me that being advised to have that note at the end to absolve us of legal responsibility doesn't come up to a standard that I think we ought to have if we are indeed the caring community that we think we are. That I think that going one step further and indicating that to use our facilities as an organization, you ought also to have a concussion policy, and then, or you can't use it, and then I think we will have fulfilled the requirement that's indicated in that last note, but we will also have had a bigger effect on the prevention of concussion with other organizations. Leave it there.
Yeah, thank you. Were you proposing an amendment or a rewrite on this?
I would. I don't think I've heard an explanation for maintaining this the way it is. So I would like to propose an amendment that says that in fact, the town, while not responsible for implementing any concussion or head injury policy for independent teams, et cetera, we nevertheless would require that those independent teams, et cetera, have a concussion policy that at least meets our standard.
Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we should use the word recommend. I don't think we, as a condition of using our facility, you must have this. I don't think that we would legally be able to do that. I think to recommend the fact that it's advisable that you do that. I know through my involvement with minor hockey that there is a strong educational piece in concussion and first aid stuff involved with that group. They are perfectly covered because they are responsible enough to know that they could be liable. Other groups that don't do that will go in there blank. But for us to put a condition, you can't have our ice unless you do have disqualification, I think is a little overkill, a little out of order, and I don't think we have that jurisdiction. So, just my opinion.
Thank you. Any further discussion on that point? Councillor Papp.
How should I say this delicate? I have had extensive experience in this. And firstly, I think you're on the right track. However, I think we need more extensive expansion of what it means, A, to develop such a health and preventive safety measure, the legal responsibility that we undertake through you to the director, and also consultation with our independent insurer. There are, and I won't get into all this, there are lots of organizations that do education on brain injury, concussions, etc. I think the question remains for ourselves as a matter of protection, as you've heard me say before, on how we go about developing a proactive policy on behalf of the town that A, deals with staff, because staff could get injured multiple ways, whether it's car accidents, falling off things, ourselves. And then there's participants that are using our facilities in our programs. And if that's the case, Vicky, I think that's something we need to be very clear, and that has to be stipulated. And then to Councillor Durley's point, for those that are external groups that are self-incorporated, and whether or not we wish to ask that we will, put in place a policy that they would have to understand that if any of the kids that, whether it's hockey, soccer, baseball, whatever the case may be, that this is what we are asking them to be. So I think there's more extensive work that need to be done. And I think if you, I can think of several associations affiliated. In fact, there's a group just at Brock University that specialize in this and could help us form a much more, and I'm not being critical, a much more comprehensive approach to this. So I would ask that if we could send it back for further information and then bring it back, but by no means, I have to tell you that you're on the right track. This is becoming more self-evident. It's not just sports activities, but many others. So, there's a plethora of information available and guidance with this, and I would ask that you pursue it and also seek, I know Madam Treasurer, should talk to ensure what this implies, and also to our legal people that if, in fact, whether we recommend or even suggest, some people can say no, but if it's our assets and our facilities they're using, and they fall, hit, knock themselves out, the question remains, are we liable? Probably the answer is yes. Did we have something that was proactive that told them up front? Okay. Were we, how could I say, diligent in how we maintained the field and people slipped, fall? I mean, it can go on for hours. So, at least to say I've had a lot of experience in this, and I would suggest that there's a lot of knowledge out there to help us form a very proactive policy. So, if you're in agreement with, I would prefer to see it brought back with some of those answers to the particular policy.
Thank you, Councillor Papp. But Mr. Mayor, you had your hand up to
Thank
speak to
you,
the-
thank you, Mr. Chair, and I agree with Councillor Papp that there's probably more that should be here, and it's a great start, and certainly
Right
commend
track.
staff for moving us along the track. And it sounds like it will be sent back to work on, but the piece that I don't see here, and maybe it's because it didn't jump out at me, is the enforcement piece. So when I think of things like public skates, I know other facilities, it's either mandated or encouraged that helmets are worn by youth under a certain age that are in the public skates. And I can't remember, there is a sign there, but I don't know, is it enforced? So there's nothing in this about enforcement. When I think about the skate park has certain rules,
It's our place.
and we say that they will be enforced, and yet enforcement isn't in the policy. So the policy is a higher level document. This is simply saying, we're gonna educate volunteers, not even members, it does say public, sorry. We're gonna educate people, but nothing about enforcement. And I think that's the missing piece. What are we gonna do if somebody goes out on and somebody's at the skate park and doesn't wear a helmet?
That's right.
It says it on the thing, we should have a policy to say, you know what? We're gonna enforce this policy, and it's for their safety and for the town's, safety. It kind of just on that particular piece, this is an issue that the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council spoke about last year, that and I know the Active Transportation Committee is working on encouraging the use of helmets. And maybe the part of the educating is also encouraging people to wear them. Maybe it's a sticker that you get, the cool sticker of the year, and you can get it for free, or maybe it's discounts on helmets like we used to do for water barrels. You get a discount for bringing your receipt, you get a discount in. That kind of thing is also not in the policy. So when it comes back, I'd like to see that element in the policy as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All very excellent comments put forward here. Councillor Durley.
Yes, I just noticed there, Mr. Chair, and through you probably to Ms. Van Ravensway, there was consultation with the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sports concussion guidelines. Was that just referring to their document, or did you speak to some experts from there in the formation of this policy?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes. We had met with our ministry consultant, and this was reviewed by them. But in their recommendation, the less detailed, the better it was. But if it's council's wish to go into more detail, more enforcement, then that's what we will do.
And just through you, if I may.
Yes, absolutely.
The more detailed you are, the more chance you are for somebody to step on your toes, and that's I'm sort of looking at that. In fact, Ministry of Tourism know what they're doing, and I think the direction from there, if we can get a full thought of what they're saying, perhaps that could help us in our debate here. And again, I know we're looking at the joint and several and all this kind of stuff where every time there's going to be a lawsuit, we're going to be named. But at the same token, these people know what they're doing, and their recommendations, I think, should carry some weight.
Ms. Van Ravensway.
Going to add to that, the detail would come out in the education part, and we would be promoting with the pamphlets and distributing it to every renter, and the identifying concussion and what to do and the signs and things like that. Although it does not go into enforcement or that aspect. So yeah, there's more work to be done.
Councillor Papp.
Just to pick up, and I understand, Councillor Durley, where you're coming from. So my point is this, and I don't want to continue. If they have examples of other municipalities, because I have not seen this too often, have them send that and we use those examples. What I'm saying is as simple as I can. Legal and insurance review is required. Because once you start educating, then they assume that you're responsible, and if something goes wrong, and I'm not saying, I'm not a big detail guy, but the truth is, once you get down this road, and you're gonna be considered as one of the, how can I say, the purveyors of making sure that everything that we provide is concussion preventative, then let's make sure that all our bases are covered and we're immunized. If in fact they have other municipalities that have got these policies, because the case in point is, when you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, there was a huge debate at another municipality about whether they were going to buy helmets for public skating, and whether every person, and the persons who showed up at the public skate didn't have a helmet were not allowed on the ice. So and that's exactly what happened. So it'll be interesting to see what that detail is, and if they've got that kind, which I'm sure they do, let's take a look at those best practices and apply them here. That's all I'm saying.
Any further comments? I'd just like to make a very brief comment. First of all, I don't think that in our policy we need to state that we're enacting this policy because grant applications require it. I think that's irrelevant. I think we enact a policy because we think the policy is proper and it's proactive and it's designed to educate and try and prevent serious injury. The other question I have concerns about is people making the call to remove a player from play. Diagnosis of a concussion is an extremely difficult thing to undertake, even for experts. So I think we need to be very careful about how we couch that and look at that section of it very carefully, because it puts a tremendous onus on the coaching, supervisory, administrative staff when it comes to making that call. It's either an all or none thing. I mean, you don't want to get down to trying to fine-tune diagnosis of various levels of concussion and et cetera, et cetera. So I think we have a recommendation on the floor here from Councillor Papp that we refer this back to staff. With that, I'm going to call that question if you're all in agreement. Councillor Rubiak, you want to comment further?
Just as a point of order, but maybe the way of resolving the point of order is to suggest that if the clerk looks at her notes, she'll note that I actually hadn't made a motion about the last point, but we're really thinking about it. Otherwise, we'd have that on the table.
Yeah, I didn't.
Needing to deal with that.
I'm sorry, Councillor Rubiak, I didn't get that you had made a motion to.
And in light of this discussion, I believe I had not. Thank you.
Okay.
Just for clarity.
From your recollection?
I can speak to that.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I did take that to be a motion, but a motion to refer back to staff would take precedent over that motion.
Would it?
So the motion to refer back to staff is in order.
Perfect. Perfect.
My apologies, Councillor Rubiak.
Mine for not understanding that as well.
So we have a motion to refer back to staff. All those in favor? That motion is carried. So let's put that here.
Referred, yep. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. And next order of business is program refund policy. And we have a motion here by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Durley, that the issue summary report program refund policy be received, and that Policy and Priority Committee recommend to Council that the program refund policy be approved, and that the Policy and Priorities Committee recommend to Council that the swimming pool refund policy COMM/03 be repealed and replaced with the approved program refund policy. Discussion. Councilor Rubiak.
Thank you. Just a couple of minor points since we're at this. Under solution statement number 1, there's a statement that says the administration fee will be waived if you accept a credit on your account. It's a syntactical thing more than anything else. I don't know who you are, but I think we're referring to the person who paid the price. So I think there's some wording in there that needs to just clean that up a little bit. And in the same area with respect to number 3, when a refund request is submitted on or after the 3rd day of the registration period, no refund will be given. And I'm not sure I understand the difference between 3rd day of the registration period or the 3rd day of the event, or The registration period may in fact not even be 3 days long. The event, however, may be longer. Just some clarification with
Let's turn
respect
to
to that.
Ms. Van Ravensway.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. That's actually a mistake. It's supposed to be the third day of the program, not registration, so that will be correct.
Thank you.
Any other comments? I too had the same comment as you, and I wondered if we could have some consistent wording as opposed to class, but maybe program consistently throughout the policy, just to refine the language there. And I don't know that we need to refer that back to staff. They can make those minor adjustments before we bring it to council, if you're all in agreement with that. Any further discussion on the motion that's before us? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Okay. I have a motion by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Durley, that this regular meeting of Policy and Priorities Committee be adjourned until the next regular committee scheduled for Monday, March 3rd, 2014, unless sooner called by the mayor. Discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Motion is carried. I think we're done, huh? This meeting is adjourned.